My name is Brad Paquette. I'm the director of the School of Kingdom Writers, and I am so happy that you are joining us today. So if you're out there on Facebook and you're joining us live, I'd love to hear from you. So we'll do our best to monitor comments and questions and things like that throughout the broadcast. So if you want to be a part of this, if you want to join in, please drop something in the comment. And you guys are probably used to online church by now. If you don't comment, you aren't there. So please take a moment, just say hello, drop notes as you're listening to things. And I'd like you to take 1 minute right now and share this broadcast with somebody that you think will benefit from it. So, a big reason that I want to do these types of broadcasts is just to mostly celebrate the work that God is doing. Tim Pollock and I were talking just a few minutes before the broadcast, and it's so amazing to see how God is raising up similar initiatives among lots and lots of different people, right? And so we just want to celebrate all the ways that God is doing similar things and the ways that they overlap and the ways that He's using different people and perspectives to do the same thing in a unique way. So we're going to talk to Tim today. He's the one of the founders of BigFish FolkLife, which is a storytelling organization. So I'm excited to talk to him. I think that he is a great example of somebody that that lives at this convergence of vision and hard work. Throughout the Bible, we see this common narrative of sort of the anointed servant, right? And we see people like Joseph and we see people like Daniel. But if you read through the Old Testament, there's all these lesser known figures who are commended for their hard work, who are given authority and stature and the ability to do things within the kingdoms of God. And I think that it's easy to miss that component when we think about vision and calling, especially as it relates to the arts. God is absolutely raising up people to use the arts for the kingdom of God. God first and foremost is creator God. That is his first identity in the Bible. And we can lose sight of the arts as part of our expression, as part of our worship and celebration of the Lord. But similarly, art for art's sake is valuable. If you love to paint, if God is calling you to do that, if you worship through paint or through writing or storytelling, you should do that. But there's also another place that God raises up people who have skill and who have anointing and who can really make things happen on a grander scale for the kingdom. And so I want to focus on those people through these broadcasts. And we have this tendency, right, to focus on hyper successful people, like the big names that you would recognize, the conference speaker type people and things like that. And those are wonderful, inspiring stories. But the problem is that they're difficult to emulate. The names that you could name off your hand, people that you admire, and with our audience, the people, probably people across the theological spectrum that you would identify with, they can call up any organization, any bookstore in the world and get an appointment, get a meeting, have a crowd there. That's probably not realistic for you. So I want to talk to people that are doing kind of the street level work, who are really changing their communities, neighbor by neighbor, one step at a time. And so with no further ado, I want to bring Tim Pollock into the conversation here. So let me give him the introduction that he deserves. So Tim is the managing director of BigFish FolkLife, and he's also the pastor of Bloomfield United Presbyterian Church in New Concord. And Tim, I believe you founded BigFish FolkLife with your wife, and were there others involved as well?
Yeah, in fact, there are three founding members of Big Fish. That would be my wife, Rachel, and our good friend, Candace McMath, who is currently down in North Carolina. And it really started with, we love Jesus and we love art. And that's how it started. And we weren't sure why we were getting together. We just knew we liked doing different types of art. Another connection that we had was that Candace was a puppet builder. And my wife and I, our first full-time jobs we had theater backgrounds, we were traveling puppeteers. So we kind of had that connection. And it just seemed like we had all these connections with art and with Christian groups. And all three of us did feel also that sometimes we lived in this sort of shadowland of being too Christian for artists or too artistic for Christians.
Right.
And so in a way, it really started as this fellowship community where we didn't have to explain what it meant to be an artist for Christ or a Christian artist or an artist who loves Christ. There's all different problematic ways to understand those titles. And that's really where Big Fish began. was a relationship, um, a shared love of Christ, and what to do with this art that we kept finding ourselves falling into.
Yeah.
So that's really how it started. Um, and then it was really hit or miss, Brad, for, I don't know, we kept trying things and then kind of checking in and reflecting and trying some other things and coming in and then we're like, we weren't even sure if we wanted to be an organization. I think I talked to you at the cafe many years ago because we were trying to wonder if we should be a for-profit nonprofit or a nonprofit or a church, or we
Right. I
weren't really
remember that.
sure. Yeah, we weren't really sure. But we kind of kept trying anyway. It's really easy in those early days to get hit with like a paralysis analysis.
Right.
And you just kind of have to fail a couple times
Mhm.
and reflect what God is showing you, um, until you start kind of getting a good sense of what's all this about. And I loved
Yeah.
what you said about hard work and vision. At the time that we were looking at BigFish, and I've been at Bloomfield for almost 8 years. I was really, I spent a lot of time in Nehemiah. And Nehemiah is a great one to look at for somebody trying to start something new, because God completely blessed the work of rebuilding the wall. He completely blessed Nehemiah to go and do that. And yet there's lines in that Old Testament that says they worked from sun up to sundown with a
Right.
spear in
Yeah.
their hand. Um, and the whole work was blessed. There was no question that God was involved, but people had to work.
Right.
They had to put in the work, even though it was blessed. I think we get this sort of misconception that when God blesses a work, that means we don't have to do anything. Um,
Right, absolutely.
uh,
No, that's a fantastic example in Nehemiah. Well, and so Tim, just to kind of bring people up to speed, tell us about Big Fish. So the website, kind of your what I assume is the mission statement, is a folk life community who share God's love through stories of salt and light. So what's the vision there? What's the point of this spear for Big Fish? What do you guys do?
um, well, the heart of it was that we just felt like story was a great way to enter into a life and invite people into the life of Christ. And storytelling, we view that broadly. You can do it with dance, you can do it with writing. There's a lot of different ways, and certainly Jesus was and God, frankly, excellent storyteller. And there's
Right.
something about story. And the reason why we wanted to do Salt and Light was that we had some. We felt like that sometimes on one end of the spectrum of art, it can almost go sentimental, and we felt like that there needs to be a little saltiness. We need to be comfortable with uncomfortable stories, because certainly Scripture is full of those too, right? And
Right.
so we can't just always do faith stories where things work out in the end. There's the hard ones. I mean, think about Job and those kinds of stories. They're just as important, and so that's where the salty part came in.
I mean, even the nice stories are kind of terrible, right? I mean, you think about Noah's Ark, right? We put up the border around your nursery with the animals
Yeah.
going two by two, and we leave out the, millions
Oh, yeah,
dead, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to have that saltiness in there. On the other end, though, my wife, Rachel, went to a number of fringe festival theater festivals, and she saw a lot of opportunity because it was a place. That's where the folk life for Big Fish comes from. It's this idea that it can be grassroots too, that we honor folk art, everyday art,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And it was cool at these fringe festival theaters that you had people that were doing original work, one people shows, and people could see it. But there's a lot of darkness in the art world, without the light to kind of take you out. And so that's where the light part came. And so we're trying to bring in all those aspects. The light part was also, Big Fish aims to have some fun, joy, and delight. We can be over serious with our art, and I think we can be over serious with our faith too.
Sure. Yeah.
I think as artists, we get kind of wrapped up with, what do I do? That sometimes just having some fun with something, and having it light. Um, and the other thing that we had is we wanted to have kind of a retreat center care center for artists of faith. I, I personally, I don't know what everyone's views are on spiritual warfare and that sort of thing, but I think when you're an artist, um, you have to be vulnerable and open yourself to the spiritual world.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that foundation of Christ or the Holy Spirit to kind of watch over you, there's some dark places you can go. And so we wanted to create a space where artists could be vulnerable and open, but that they could essentially be prayed up, a place that's safe, a place of connection in that. And so we really see at the heart of Big Fish bringing stories, bringing artists and audience together, but also caring for artists as well.
Yeah, Tim, do you think that that's, you know, because you see artists and creatives often struggle with darkness more
Yeah.
so than maybe their analytical counterparts. Do you think that's in the process of art? Or do you think that's kind of the way we come wired, and art is both an expression, like a symptom of it and a cause at the same time?
I think there's got to be some kind of connection, because, like I said, you've got to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You have to be open to what's happening. And if you look at a biblical understanding of the spiritual world, there's good things and there's bad things floating out there. I think about the book of Acts a lot, where people would experience the Holy Spirit, but they didn't know what it was.
Right.
And they needed somebody to kind of explain. So I kind of see that as a place of, just to get back to Big Fish real quick. So
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
no, that's fine. So the three main things that we've done so far that we're kind of like, okay, these are the big three things. One is to bring audiences and artists together and sharing those stories. That's where the storytelling festival fits in. We do that Labor Day weekend. We've done it for 3 years now. The other key one is to produce and send out. So Rachel did a one-woman show and premiered it at Washington, D.C. in the Fringe Festival Theater. And we really felt committed that we didn't just want to be in Christian circles where we present our stuff. So we've gone to churches, we've done church plays, like Rachel wrote a play about the women going to the tomb, and we've performed that a couple of times. But we also felt like that if these stories are true, they should be out in sort of a quote unquote mainstream area as well, or the secular world. There's no reason why we should sort of put ourselves in the Christian artist ghetto. We should have a voice out there too. And then the third part is caring for artists. And this is the one that's taking the longest. And my wife and I live on a farm. I just put a roof on a little log cabin that'll be our chapel. We're in the process of building a tiny house. And so we're trying to create a retreat, tiny house, but also a retreat center is the long-term goal. That's the physical part, where artists can come and workshop here or do a retreat or something, and then know that they'll be cared for and prayed for. So there's kind of like the big three pieces that kind of make the whole of what Big Fish is about. And we had those general ideas, but like I said, we tried a lot of things that kind of failed and kind of succeeded. And then as we met people and started understanding, because it's about community too, right? You're trying to, God gives you this mission and vision, but it's not just for you, it's for somebody. And sometimes you're kind of looking for the somebody. And then once you kind of figure out that somebody in the community, pieces start coming together that you didn't expect. And so some of the things that we thought we'd never get to, all of a sudden we're doing them. And there are moments at Big Fish where it feels like, man, it's going to take forever. And then other times you're like, God, slow down. This got really fast. And I don't know how we ended up here, but this is what we asked for, but it's moving faster than what we expected. So I don't know what to tell the listeners about that expectation, but just be comfortable with surprise, I guess.
Well, it's a beautiful vision, Tim. I love it so much. And, you know, you mentioned failure several times, right? And, you know, I think one of the things that we often don't do very well, maybe personally as creatives, but also as a church, is making space for people to fail, right? No better way to learn than by failing. But how have you specifically within the Big Fish vision kind of balanced the ability to fail and reevaluate and pivot versus the ability to like feel setback, but persevere in the vision?
A lot of that reflection comes in prayer, and this is where the community comes because the BigFish FolkLife community, um, that's it. We're not meant to do faith alone. There are moments when we're supposed to be in solitude, but we really need to have that community kind of checking in with each other.
Yeah.
So I call that space grace space for failure, right? Um, because we have the vision and mission, we've had it for some time, but how one activates it, um, there are some things you're going to try and you're going to pray about it, like, okay, what can we learn from this, and not to get discouraged. But then there's other times where God gave you a very specific thing to do, and even though it's not successful right away, you just kind of have to trust it. And I think part of it is that we have to be honest about, I'm trying to get, how do I get there? I think sometimes as artists, we get a little too trapped in the producing a product part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That if I'm going to put all the, I don't, okay, so my wife and I just had this conversation this morning.
Okay.
Her biggest fear, we all have different fears that hold us back from just sort of diving in and being comfortable with failing, but also persevering at the same time. For her, her key phrase is, I don't want this to be a waste of time. That's her biggest one.
Yeah.
And the problem is that as humans, we don't know what's a waste of time until after the fact.
Right.
I'm glad you kind of talked about that, because I think sometimes people feel like, if I'm going to take all this time to do this work of art, it better be worth it. And then we create expectations of what worth it means.
Right.
Right. That I'm going to be on a talk show. I'm going to sell millions of books. This is going to be my full-time career. I get to leave my job, all these sorts of things. And when that happens, we feel like we failed.
Right.
And sometimes there are going to be pieces of art that we work on that really are not for the public, that really are for you and your relationship with God. There's a famous theologian, I can't remember his name, who said that prayer and worship is a royal waste of time. And so I was just talking about that with Rachel, because she's going to start a new project. And the old fears kind of are creeping up. And it's like, hey, if you get to create with God for a couple of hours, that's time well spent, just being a part of that. Not everything's going to be a hit. Not everything's going to be, and sometimes you learn by doing, artists do this all the time, painters, they have samples, they have studies. Those aren't the things that become the things, but there's something important about doing that. The same thing with writing. You just got to write. Like, I remember, I didn't finish my dissertation, but I was working on a dissertation, and I remember the best advice I ever got, and she was absolutely right. She said, "You're not writing unless you're writing." And what she meant with that is sometimes we fake ourselves. We convince ourselves that, well, I'm writing in my head. No, you're not. Sometimes
I'm researching, right?
Yeah, right. Researching, or, just getting my headspace straight. Sometimes you just got to write and see what you got. Are you familiar with the book, The Artist Way?
I am. Yeah. Is that Erwin McManus?
I'm trying to remember who did it, but it was basically like a series of things to do. And one of the things they talked about were morning pages of handwriting 3 pages and then throwing them away.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking of the Warrior Way, but I am familiar with the Artist Way as well.
Yeah. And I think that's what writing is. Like, you don't know what's good until you spend some time with it.
Yeah.
And just kind of jump in. I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy. And I know a lot of people see that and they think, oh, wow, they're really funny, but you're looking at 10 years worth of work, and probably you're only seeing 10% of what they've ever produced.
Right. Yeah. That special that you see is the best aggregate content of like years of bombing. Right. And, you do a whole set and one joke really lands. So you keep that one, right?
Well, and my dad's a musician.
Okay.
And he probably could make that a career if he wanted to. He writes his own music. He plays the guitar. He's produced CDs, and people have said that. And he said, well, I like keeping it where it's something I enjoy doing, but I don't want to make it a career. And I think that's another thing that we have to look at, whether it's starting, like one of the things we had to decide with Big Fish is this going to be our main source of income, or is this something that we do together, even though we're both working full time? And I think that's a decision, and that'll help you decide what you're going to do with your nonprofit.
Is that an ongoing discussion for you, or do you feel pretty
Yes.
settled on it?
No. It's ongoing.
Yeah.
I think there was a point in time where it was like, okay, let's see if we can make a living off of this. But I think right now God's given us more than enough to work on, and I don't know. We'll see where things go. If 5 years it looks like we really could make a living off of it. But that's not to say that if you're somebody that's like, hey, we're gonna make this is gonna be a sink or swim situation. Sometimes we're called to do that too.
Right.
So we had to do a lot of constantly checking in with God, and that helps you decide what's the point of the nonprofit. Not everyone needs to create one, right? We certainly did some things as Big Fish before we were official in 2018, and a lot of times your decision to start an organization kind of depends on not only the vision and mission, but what role are you playing in it, and what's sort of the purpose. And so go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a great point. When people are thinking about getting into some kind of ministry or artistic endeavor, we often jump to that 501c3 nonprofit status, right? Which brings so much stress and headaches and just paperwork and administration. And most of the time it's unnecessary. If you don't make any money, you're a nonprofit, so you're not going to pay any taxes anyways, right?
No. And if you're not planning to pay people,
right.
And if you're mostly going to be using donations and grants, once you get a good feel for what role the organization, you can make a pretty quick decision of, do we even need to be one? So Big Fish is a nonprofit, but we actually are not we're not a 501c.
Okay.
Let me share this. Don't be afraid to partner with other nonprofits. You don't have to do this by yourself.
Right.
We made an early decision after meeting with the Muskingum County Community Foundation to have what's called a pass-through account with them. So that means any donations we receive, they hold on to it for us. And because of that, they're the ones that do all the paperwork,
right.
all of that. So whenever we pay artists, with all the W-9s and that sort of thing, our MCCF does that for us.
Yeah.
So that makes our ability to kind of focus really well. So, and they're not technically a religious community. That's one of those things that don't be afraid to make partners, not only in the Christian world, but outside of the Christian world too. Because we're supposed to be a part of the community. So it's good to be a part of all the conversations happening. So
Definitely.
That's where we landed. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not limited only to Muskingum County, right? I mean, there are community foundations all over the place, or similar organizations that could do
there's
that
a lot of them that
function.
do some great. I'll tell you what, because I'm the one that did the paperwork for the nonprofit, and you got to set aside a lot of time to read and kind of understand what you're reading and what you're choosing. I know, Brad, you probably had to do the same thing. Like, what am I filling out? And it was really helpful to find some partners, whether formal or informal, to help you with that. And to talk about choices. So the way we set up our organizations definitely set up that if we wanted to expand, one of the early things we had to kind of figure out is who owns the property as we're working on this quote unquote retreat center. We opted to, it's still, Big Fish doesn't own any property. We weren't ready to get into that. And we're not really ready to open up the retreat center.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been primarily supporting it through our own funds. And then we'll make a decision down the road once it's done. Is this something that it's going to be our property and Big Fish essentially rents it from us, or
right?
And then that's when you want to talk to people about liability and that sort of thing. There's advantages and disadvantages either way.
Sure. Now, Tim, is there anything that you guys really wasted a lot of time on in the beginning that if you could do it all over again, you would have just skipped that whole thing?
You know how they always tell you to do a 5-year plan?
Yeah.
Don't.
I agree.
um, we wasted so much time trying to fit all of our ideas into one structure, and it became overwhelming. It became really overwhelming fast. Do you have to have kind of a 5-year plan? Yeah, like where you all are, Kingdom Writers, you can't just say, oh yeah, we're going to just buy a building, and like there's
Sure.
obviously
Right.
planning
Right.
that goes into it. But we wasted a lot of time trying to take all of our ideas and make them all happen all at once.
Mhm.
I mean, we wasted a lot of time. Um, it would have been better to say, what are the 2 or 3 that we're going to work on, and just work on those, and work on them for maybe 3 or 5 years like that. And then once we did that, it didn't feel so overwhelming. And now we're at a place where we're at a good maintenance level, and then when we're ready to expand, we are. So we have about 10 other ideas that we could be doing with Big
Right.
Fish, but it's better to pick 1 or 2 or 3 max that you're going to work with. I think this happens in writing a lot too. When people sit down, they got an idea for a novel. Usually they have actually an idea for about 5 of them.
Right.
Really just need 1. I'm ABD. I didn't finish my dissertation. Maybe one day I will. I remember I did my proposal and did some initial research for my dissertation, and they told me, you've got 3 of them in here. Pick 1.
Right.
And I think we all do that. You know, we were planning to have um, videos and animation, and I've got samples of all this. Like I've got this really cool sample of doing Jonah as a comedy, of all things. Like that's where Big Fish comes from, is Jonah in the belly of the whale.
Okay.
Uh, and you know, and we were gonna, and we actually started assigning, like I was gonna be in charge of the technical fishnet. We created this whole thing called Fishnet, and we tried to do it all at once. It was, and then we ended up wasting 3 years trying to do everything and not getting anything done. And then once we stripped it back and just said, okay, what are like 2 or 3 projects that we're just going to focus on? Even this storytelling festival, there's that temptation to do more than just 1 a year, but 1 a year is fine right
Right.
now, you know, and because now that we've done it for 3 years, we're coming up on a 4th, we understand it better. That'll probably help grow the other thing. It's kind of like when you go to Kickstarter before you even have a group of a community. You
Yeah.
need to build the community first before you even bother with, because I know artists ask about Patreon and a few other Patreon, excuse me.
Sure.
And most of the books will tell you you need to have that community relationship first before you even get on there.
Well, and then you run into like a chicken and the egg situation, right?
Yeah,
Where you
yeah.
need the community in order to have the stuff, but you need the stuff in order to get the community. And so I hear you saying, you know, just one step at a time, go slow. Any other advice? Because I think so many creatives and writers are in that place. They feel like they're stuck and trapped there. Eh, Thoughts for those guys?
Well, trapped where? You
In
mean in
that
terms of
place
like?
between, you know, where that chicken and the egg scenario, where they feel like, you know, they need the publicity in order to get the community, but how to get one without the other.
Uh, yeah, I think it starts with being focused on 1 or 2 projects. You know what I mean? And just kind of
Absolutely.
making their thing. I've got a great friend in Nashville. Um, has he made it as an independent writer? Depends how you do that. He's published 3 books.
All right.
Um, and so he was working on it, but then he was also meeting with other independent writers at the same time. And then, but not going into, don't go into it with the agenda like, I'm going to be a part of this group to make contacts and to get things happening. Like, allow those relationships to develop, allow your
Right.
projects to develop, stay active in both, and then you'll start seeing they start kind of coming together.
Yeah.
Um, I think you have to kind of back off the pressure a little bit in a weird way, but then keep doing the work.
Sure. It's kind of a less is more approach. Yeah.
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 And don't go in with 5 or 6 or 8 agendas. You
Right.
know, so this interview with you, um, I prayed about it, and it was like, don't go in with a Big Fish agenda. Just just have a conversation and see what happens, and then whatever comes out of it is wonderful.
I love it.
That's
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Well,
Yeah.
and on a similar note, you mentioned that kind of the second prong of your vision is getting stories in front of secular audiences, right? That
Yeah.
sort of to get stuff outside of the bubble. And I think you face a similar conundrum there, right? What has worked well for you guys to get your story to get audience, I guess, with secular folks?
Well, we've only had success with one, right? So it was my wife's one woman show that started. So this is another thing with projects. Follow whatever God's doing with your project. She started a memoir called Journey to Long Nose. Okay. And then we had an opportunity to do a show version of it. She hadn't finished the book. She switched it right to a script.
Okay.
And then we did the show. And then once she did the show, she understood what the book was actually about. And so now she's going back to the memoir to finish it.
Okay.
But I think what happened was, when you are saying when you're doing a one-woman show, it's a narrative, it's personal stories. Her faith is a part of who she is, right? And that was one way to enter in. I'm not saying it's the only way, but one of the ways is the secular audience, if it's authentically you that you're presenting, like if you're doing a memoir kind of thing, it creates a different kind of way that the faith experience is received. It's no longer really a testimony. It's this is my story. And you hear that in the secular world a lot. This is my story. You can't judge it. Well, use that to your advantage. Well, this is my story.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Right. And so she just presented herself, and she didn't start out with, this is a Christian story. In fact, she started with a story of a kid who made fun of her nose. She has a very large nose that's been broken 4 times. And that's where it starts. And it's funny, but then as she's moving along, she connected it with how she was baptized. She was told that she had to be baptized, even though she'd baptized a baby, by a good friend, Cassandra McDonald, who many people and saints will know. And that became a part of her faith story and connected with her understanding of who she is, because it's really a show about identity.
Yeah.
And so by that point, people are in the story and they know that she's not presenting it to, her agenda is to share her story, and that changes the whole approach of the audience. And if Christ is a part of your story, well, then, and there's always that question of how much of God should go in there. Well, if it's a part of your authentic story. Now, that works well for memoirs, and that works well for one-person shows. I think even though we're saying to have fun, you got to keep a critical eye. This is the hard part for every artist, because these are your baby, right? That's where other friends come in handy. I think having good quality is important. There's just way too much stuff. Now, this happens in the secular world too. There's plenty of stuff out there that's just not quality. But we do have to be committed to, how should I say this, Brad?
It's tough.
I had a background. So I'm a double major. My undergraduate's in writing, creative writing actually, and theater. And it always bothered me when I would be invited to, say, direct or do a theatrical performance as a part of a church group. And oftentimes you would hear things said like, well, we'll just pray and then see what happens. I'm like, okay, let's pray. But there's an actual craft here, and there's work, and there's things that we can do to produce something of quality. That gets back to the, praying and working together. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's so important.
So I don't know if you've seen, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about other shows that are out there, but
go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I finally stumbled upon, last year, my wife and I watched Chosen, The Chosen. Really liked it. I thought the writing was solid. I thought the casting was good. I thought there was some good quality stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
And when something's quality, people are going to enter into it and check it out. So don't be afraid to play and fail, but there is a time, if you really want your stuff out there, really think about that craft.
Yeah, and I think it's time. We've seen for so long, at least in my lifetime, Christian has been synonymous with bad. a lot of the
Yeah.
time, right? It's like kind of cheesy or hokey, or it's just not well produced. And so, what Dallas Willard, I think, did with The Chosen, it really kind of raised the bar. And I think it's time for that, right? It's time for Christians to step into that spot. The same, I think we've seen this done with music over the past
Yeah.
15 years,
Absolutely.
really successfully, where you have people like Lauren Daigle that are stepping into the secular spotlight based on, faith-based work. And I would love to
Yeah.
see storytellers get
Her
there.
songs are unabashedly Christian. I
Right.
mean, and yet she's on pop radio because it's good,
Because it's
right?
good, right?
I mean, it's going to connect. So I think it's okay. Am I going to be at that level? No, but I can certainly do the best I can,
Mhm.
and really always improving. I mean, I've been preaching forever, but I still go to preaching conferences and try to think about that. Um, if we think about the scriptures, we always say that they're Holy Spirit inspired, but people still had to write them.
Yeah.
I'm doing a sermon series actually through the entire Gospel of Mark, um, and I've actually tried to memorize it. I'm still trying to do that. You can perform
Wow.
it. I've seen it performed before. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but but this time around, I've done plenty of Bible studies, and I'm really noticing the actual craft of the writing that the evangelist is using. It's
Mhm.
really interesting to think about the rhetorical choices, because you've got three other gospels telling the same story,
Yeah.
but and I'm really starting to see the craft. I don't think craft is a bad thing. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I think
Yeah.
people hear me say that with scripture and like, oh, you mean that it's manipulated? No, I'm saying this was a wholly inspired
Mhm.
person, but they still did the work of writing it down.
They made
They're
intentional
still
choices, right? Yeah.
right, and they made decisions and choices of why they wrote the way that they did.
Yeah.
And so that's been really fun to think about, and really engaging, of the craft behind writing that gospel, that went into it.
That's really cool. And I've been considering this for a while, and I think, when it comes to that issue of quality,
Mm.
Christian writers have their work cut out for them, because it's more difficult to write quality stories of light than of darkness. Working with new writers, all of your characters are jerks when you start, right? I mean, it's very easy to convince your audience that this person is authentically an unkind person, but it's much more difficult to authentically sell happy endings than it is to sell dark stuff.
Yeah, that might be just a product of news consumption,
That
right?
could
I
be true.
mean,
Yeah.
because we get bored with, with the feel good stories, but
Mhm.
a happy ending doesn't have to be a feel good, right?
Sure.
I mean, and
Well, and stories of light don't necessarily need happy endings either, right?
no, no, absolutely. But but you're right. I mean, it's sort of like that. We all wrote poetry at a certain point, and it seemed like most of us were drawn to poetry as junior high school kids because we were, insecure.
Right.
Um, and our poems reflect that. um, but I think sometimes as because I've done some poetry too, I think there's this idea that I can't have feel good poetry, right? Poetry's serious, but it doesn't
Right.
have to be. But I think like you said, like happy endings don't have to be sentimental and sweet. Um, I think that's why I like that mix of salt and light when we talk about big fish. Stories of salt and light. It's that kind of blend of things.
Mhm.
Um, well, and one of the things I do in my pastoral work, off and on, is as American Christians, I'm going to put this in American culture, we're terrible at limitation. It's a very biblical
Mm.
thing to do, and we're not very good at it. And for those that are watching, a limitation is a crying out to God, uh, as honestly as you can, but there's always a turn in the limitation where it turns back to God. um, when you have Jesus on the cross saying, God, why did you forsake me? I mean, that's a classic limitation, and we've all felt that, and we can't be afraid to say those things. But that's where the light comes in. Like, we
Right.
kind of go in this dark place, but then Christ helps us come out the other end. Um, and so we can certainly write dark things. But you're right. I think we think, well, if it's a serious novel, then we have to have an addict and single mom and
Right.
somebody who was bullied. You know, there's all these different things. It's okay to have, and then we make fun of the sentimental like characters. Well, I think we can mix it up a little bit for sure. I do like what you said. It's like they're all jerks. Your first characters, they're all jerks.
I need tension. What do I do? Introduce a jerk. Everyone will believe it, right? Well, and so Tim, I know that the Storyfest has been a big piece of what you guys have done, and obviously COVID has made everything different. What do you see for the future of Storyfest?
Well, that's one of those things where every year Storyfest has been a little different, and it's been helping us get back to what it was all about to begin with.
Cool.
So I think the Storyfest actually encapsulates what we're kind of talking about failure, but kind of sticking with it. Rachel and I had an idea to do a storytelling festival. The idea was always to make it like a fringe festival where you pay one ticket price and you've got like at any given hour, 5 or 6 different storytellers you could go see in downtown New Concord. And that was our big, and we tried to make that happen. And when we tried to explain it to people, they just looked at us like, what are you talking about? We actually had somebody ask us, what do you mean storytelling? And we just threw up our hands. We're like, what do you mean? What do you mean storytelling? Like, it's a person telling a story. I don't know how else to explain it. And we tried to bring together a group to make it happen. And we knew it could happen. Like, we knew this could be really good, but nobody quite got it. So we put it on the back burner for a couple of years. And then about 3 years ago, New Concord was trying to do something with Muskingum University to recreate this kind of block party that happened when the John Glenn High School basketball team won the state championship. They wanted to try to recreate that.
Okay.
And I was sitting at one of these meetings, and I'm like, and I noticed that there was like this little, basically 5-hour window of possible programming. And I said, hey, could you give that to Rachel and myself? We weren't even Big Fish yet. We were just like, could we play with that? And like, sure. So we tried, we did a storytelling contest. We brought in a national storyteller, and we brought in, and we got grants and funding from all over the place. And there were 3 things that worked really well and a bunch of other things that just didn't. And so we took those, and then what happened was they didn't want to do the block party thing again. They thought like it was kind of a failure, but we felt like the bones were there. Like, there was something cool here if we just sort of reduce it a little bit. You know, we try to do too much. And so the second year, they gave it to us. They said, okay, you're in charge of it now. We're like, oh, okay.
No, never mind.
Because they were like, we don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And at that point, we started developing our company, our nonprofit. So then we did one day, we did an evening, Friday evening, and then all day Sunday. And we had bouncy houses, and we had food trucks, and we had an artist festival, and we had the storytelling contest. We had national storyteller again, and we had 2 of them, and then we had storytelling contest. And a lot of people liked it because in some ways we reduced all the stuff and made it focused, but then people felt like it was still too much, too long, because we went from like 8 in the morning to 8 at night, and it was just, and frankly, we were exhausted too. We came back together, there were 4 other people, and we're like, we can't do this anymore. So we weren't sure what we're going to do with the third. COVID hit, and we already had good partnership, and we already had these storytellers lined up, and we got grant money to pay them, which they really appreciated. We really like to try to pay artists, and we're like, well, what can we do? And then that's when we talked to the college radio station and said, hey, why don't we just do this as a radio show? Because radio, even people without Facebook and internet, because we talked about doing live streaming and that sort of thing, like, let's just do radio. And we still wanted music, and we still came up with some ways to do a storytelling contest. We had 2 national storytellers, one from Georgia. They had to do Zoom onto the radio. But we needed a space. Muskingum didn't have a good space at the time because of COVID restrictions for a band. And we were stuck. We were 2 days out. Some things fell through because we had these spaces set up where we could do a remote live feed and do like a studio, and it kept getting calls of just like, because of COVID, we can't have it. Because of COVID, we can't have it. So then I was at the coffee shop here in New Concord. I know you've been there, Brad. And I was talking with Garrett. He's like, you could use the coffee shop. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, we're not here on Sundays. You can come in Saturday And so we converted the, the coffee shop into a sound studio. And we would go, so my wife was in the studio with the storytelling part, and I had the musicians. And people loved the show. It was only it was 5 hours of programming. So we filled that 5 hours of programming. And we all felt really good about it. And then it kind of reminded us that the Storytelling Festival wasn't about bouncy houses and porta potties and all these things. We thought we needed all those things. The radio show helped us understand, oh, the original vision was bringing artists and audiences together, sharing stories of salt and light. And sometimes we overcomplicate things. COVID was a blessing for the Storytelling Festival because it helped us remember what it was, the core of it was about. Yeah. And so, and the radio station loved working with us in the work that we produced, that when we do the next Storytelling Festival, it will basically be a radio show recorded in front of a live studio audience kind of thing.
Interesting.
And
cool.
So we're just going to focus on the programming. If other people want to come around us to add that festival feel to it, that's wonderful. But we just had to say, you know what, we don't, as an organization, we don't have to run everything. It's okay. Yeah. And God kind of reminded us, this is what it was all about anyway. And so sometimes COVID and limitations are great for an artist. I just want to make that clear. I know some artists feel like, don't hem me in. Right. Yeah, hem in. Sometimes when you're forced to make creative decisions because things aren't going your way, that's when the good stuff really happens.
You'll never be more productive, at least, right?
Right. And then you kind of get a little bit more clarity of what's happening and what you're doing and why. The storytelling and the storytellers, they did a lot of Zoom stuff, but they were often told by other organizations that, well, since you're online, we'll only pay you half. But we have never charged people. We've always done it based on grants and donations, and we were able to raise enough money to pay the full price for all of our artists, including we like the amateur part too. So we had some amateur. They didn't know they were getting paid. I don't know how they didn't catch that. So when I was able to give them a check, the musical acts that did like 20 minutes worth of stuff. Yeah. They were like, I got paid for this and I got to be on the radio. I said, yeah. And that makes me happy because as much as we're artists, we also, Big Fish wants to be something that takes care of artists. And, you know, so there were 3 artists that got to be premiered. One was my son, so there's a little bit of nepotism there, I suppose. He has a band. It
happens, yeah.
Music, but we had a singer who we met a couple of years ago who was just kind of like, I'd really like to kind of get my name out there. And then somebody that we had heard that we said, hey, do you want to be on the radio? They said, yeah. And
that's fantastic.
In fact, some of our amateur storytellers, we pre-recorded them and then we kind of set them up. One guy, this is his 2nd year doing it. He's a friend of mine, a pastor, and people everyone loved his stories the best. And so we already talked to him and said, you want to see what happens when you're not just an amateur and kind of be showcased. And so that's been fun too.
That's amazing. Well, and so, Tim, I know people can go to bigfishfolklife.org, but if somebody has 15 minutes right now and they want to be a part of this, they want to help out in some way or just connect with you, how can they do that? What should they do?
Well, we do have on the website, bigfishfolklife.org. If you scroll down towards the bottom, there's you can sign up for a newsletter. They're kind of off and on right now, but we'll be gearing those up again. And you can check out our blogs, and there's a way to contact us. If you want to support us financially too, there's a link that brings you to MCCF for that as well. I would say that the next thing for folks to really pay attention to is we're doing another storytelling festival. It's going to happen Labor Day weekend. If you're an artist or a storyteller or a musician and you're interested to be a part of that, you can go to that website. That's really the best way to get a hold of us because the phone number's there, all of that sort of thing. And also keep checking in. The tiny house that we're building, we're hoping to finish it this summer. It's been a long project. our concept of that is to be like a writer's cabin. So if you have any of your folks who are actually a part of your organization, Brad, who might need a weekend to just kind of be on their own,
Yeah.
to work on something, that's our hope, is that my wife had lots of we struggled to find, because there were times where Rachel was working on writing projects and just needed that extra space,
Hmm.
and they're really hard to find. And so we're like, we got property, maybe we can create something where somebody can spend a week or a weekend just kind of focused.
That's wonderful.
And that
Yeah.
and that's
We
that we're hoping to I have that offer for all of you. When it's ready, I'll let you know. And if you've got people that want to use it for some reason, we'd love to have them.
definitely, yeah, keep us in the loop. We'd love to take you up on that. I'm
Absolutely.
sure we could send people your way. So, well, Tim, I would love to pray for you now, if that's
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you.
So, yeah, you guys, if you're watching live or you're joining us on the podcast later, your prayers still count. So, please just join me. I just want to bless Tim. So, Lord Jesus, I just thank you for the Pollock family. Lord, I thank you for the way that you're bringing vision and just empowering, their skills and talents that you've built up in them, God, and that they've worked hard to practice and to put into use. So I just thank you for Tim's insight. I thank you that you've blessed him as a mentor and a teacher to the people around him. Father, we ask that your hand would continue to be on BigFish FolkLife, that you'd bless the Storytelling Festival, that you bless each person they interact with, Lord, and that that kingdom component of this mission would always shine through, Lord, and even when we're not trying, Lord, that you'd be the one that pushes those buttons, and we can just do our best to put forth the art and the community that you've given us. So I thank you so much for blessing Tim as part of my community and part of the Zanesville community. So thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for joining me today. I really appreciate your
Of
time.
course. Me too.
All right. Well, have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. All right. Well, that was Tim Pollock. Once again, if you want to check out BigFish FolkLife, you can find their website at bigfishfolklife.org, as well as additional information about some of the things that they do. New Concord, which Tim mentioned several times, is just 15 minutes down the road from Zanesville. It's this beautiful community. It honestly looks like something out of a movie. If you've ever watched Gilmore Girls and you're familiar with Stars Hollow, it reminds my wife and I exactly of Stars Hollow. When we go to the Christmas parade there, twice we've gone to the Christmas parade there, and both times it snows gently. It's like this place where everything just seems perfect and beautiful and cute and just what a small town should be. So it's a really neat community to have adjacent to Zanesville. It's also the home of Muskingum University. So I want to thank Tim again for joining us. And for you guys that are writers and creatives out there, thank you for joining us and just listening to Tim's insight. I think there's a lot to take away there. So at the School of Kingdom Writers right now, we are training more than 200 writers to craft stories that impact the world. And our particular focus is on novels, blogs, social media, and other new media, and taking Jesus into those spaces in creative ways, in effective and skillful ways that really impact the world for Jesus. And I think, the last year has just more than anything demonstrated the need for a mission and a ministry like this one. We've seen the COVID situation, obviously, which has forced a lot of churches to focus on media. And the church as a whole could use more individuals who are trained and proficient and have expertise in the media. So that's a big piece of what we're doing. But we've also just seen this division and discord, right? I mean, the events of the last few weeks alone, but we've seen that for the past year or more now, just ramping up. And there's sort of this national angst that I think that we're carrying now. And it really doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you sit on or how you view these events. We're all carrying that tension. And no matter what you identify as the source of the problem, I think that we can agree that the solution is Jesus, that the solution is the truth of the gospel, that the solution is the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven. And so we are training up writers who are making that happen, who are crafting stories, sometimes stories that are overtly about Jesus, and sometimes just kind of what Tim was talking about, stories that just carry that light somewhere deep inside of them and begin to shape and melt and affect people's hearts for the kingdom. And so we're training people to take these stories out in such a way that they bring the true light and encouragement, and they bring the true gospel to America through the media. So we are starting our full-time program this fall. So about 7 or 8 months from now, we will have full-time students showing up at our door. And God may be calling you to be one of those students. If God isn't calling you, he may be calling someone that you know to be one of those students. So I want you right now, I want you to go to our website, sokw.org/subscribe, and I want you to sign up for a mailing list there. And then I want you to share this mission with one other person. That person could be a writer. That person could be somebody that's concerned about the media in America, or just someone that's excited about revival. Somebody that's excited about seeing God come in a way that we've never experienced before, that we weren't expecting. So I want you to share this with somebody right now, and that does so that's so effective for the kingdom. It's so helpful for us in this particular mission. But when you share things that get you excited, when you invigorate the kingdom as a whole, I think heaven and earth become more like one. You know, that Jesus prayed that prayer, and I always return to it. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And when we celebrate the kingdom that is on the earth, we get more of it, right? And so that's such a big piece of it. So please celebrate with us by sharing this podcast and other resources that you find with writers and creatives and people that are excited about the kingdom of God. And we appreciate it. So thank you again for joining me today. And we will be back next week with another interview with somebody that is using the media or publishing or writing specifically to advance the kingdom on earth. So be blessed. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.